All right, welcome everybody to the session on content's content. Marcom is TechCom and getting to know each other, switching over to the dark side as it were. Before we begin, I want to mention that this is based on a paper that we did for Adobe titled Content is Content, the Convergence of Technical Communication and Marketing Communication. If you're tweeting out at Ash Schwanden for STC, the number 4, at Adobe TCS is here at the conference at STC 18 as well. And that QR code, for anybody who scans it with their phone, that will give you access to the white paper if you want to go in and actually download it. So you're welcome to do so. I will have that pop up once or twice towards the end, I believe, and otherwise I can always go back here. Did that come through? If not, that's me. I do stuff. Been involved with the STC for quite a while. I'm a past president of the organization, so thank you for everyone coming to the summit. And I really try to work with different teams in order to help make that business argument that content is a key business asset, if not the key business asset. I just read something, and I'm going to get the information wrong. I think it was Apple generated more revenue through content in its last quarter than Amazon has generated, or was it Amazon or Netflix has generated profit since inception. In a quarter, Apple made that much off content. So content makes money. I went through and I found this slide, content's content, the idea that content and marketing, when we took the paper and looked through it, we got those words jumping out at us, which was the goal of the paper in the first place, was to really bring forward the idea that these two things come together. This slide I'll spend a bit of time on. Juhi is the product manager for the Adobe AEM software tools. She did a presentation on technical content as part of a marketing strategy. I had to follow up that presentation, and she talked about blurring the boundaries. And even if you can't see the specifics inside the slide here at the bottom, it doesn't matter. The idea is that you've sort of got this line between the product website, white papers, case studies, and a competitive comparison that's considered marketing content. But then you also have things like a product manual, a user guide, admin guide, or technical content and how-to videos. And the audience doesn't care one way or the other, right? They look at it as content being content. So this QR code that I've put up here is to a video for this fast porcelain, and I'll probably play the video twice. But what you're watching right now is something that I saw when I went into a Lowe's, Home Depot type of an environment. So I'm inside the store, and I see this thing start playing. And as it's playing, I'm watching what the people are doing. I'm in there in order to get some carpeting for a set of steps in our house, a small area we want to do. But I look over and I hear the audio that goes with this. Now, I'm not playing the audio right now, but I hear the audio that goes with it, and it sounds a little bit like Ingvar from IKEA. But I'm watching a guy who's watching the video, and I see him out of the corner of my eye, and he's standing at the end of one of those display aisles inside the big box store. So it's this huge aisle, and as he's watching this, he walks around, he looks at something, goes back, he's got it on his phone. I walked over to see what was going on. There's a QR code, and that QR code links to the video. And I came back about a week later when our carpet arrived, and I talked to the sales guy that was helping us with the carpet we got. I said, so what's the deal? What happened there? He says, oh, the guy who was watching that video is a former retired contractor who did tile work. And he saw this stuff and decided he was going to redo his house a little bit, and he picked up some of the tile. I said, how much did he get? The guy says, about 600 square feet. I said, so what did he do, his basement? The response, no, his front hallway. Like 600 square foot front hallway? Are you insane? He said, well, he came back afterwards and picked up more to do 2,500 square feet of his basement. Like, you don't have a 2,500 square foot basement. That statement should never be allowed to be. You have 2,500 square foot home. But he had done tile work, and he watched this and came back, and I looked at the price. It was almost twice as much as normal tile. But he says, I'm retired. I'm sick of working with grout. I don't want to be sitting in that type of a position, kneeling down on the ground, dealing with all of the mix. Anyone who's ever had to do or seen tile being done, that video is the installation guide. And it just sold product. My wife and I have been building a log home for the past 2 years. Last week, Thursday, I was in the lake. It is north of Lake Huron. For the Americans, the temperature was about 40. For the Canadians, it was pretty nice. I was in the lake measuring out how far we go before it gets deep so that we can decide where the dock and how the dock is going in. But a dock will run us $10,000 to $15,000. For anyone who's put in a dock, they're a bit pricey. We looked at a couple of different companies, and one of the companies, I said, I like your product. I want to see your documentation. How do you tell me to maintain it? How do you tell me for the DIY if I want to go in and put the dock together myself based on all your materials? How clear are your instructions? And the guy said, classic line, we don't have that online because we don't want our competition to get it. Like, your competition already has your content. You know why? Because they had you put in one of their docs, and they had you put in one of your docs, and they paid for it, and now they have the content. The same way that I am positive every vendor who is here at STC has each other's documentation, because you go out and you buy the product, or you deal with a client, or you have somebody who used to work for that vendor. So even if there are the NDAs in place, people are going to find out about the content. And if you can take part of or all of your content and make it available online to show that even if you do something complex, you have instructions that walk someone through how to do it start to end, and it makes sense, it becomes a sales asset. Because then you can turn around and you can say, our product, while it's not easy to use, it is simple to find clear instructions on how to use it. Our support department takes your calls seriously. We improve our documentation when we get repeated support calls about the same types of topics. So business buyers are not contacting suppliers directly until 57% of the complete purchase decision has been made. There's tiny little print on the source for that, but that means that people are doing the research. We have the idea of the informed consumer. Who's heard of this term, the informed consumer? Okay. It's a very straightforward idea. We do it all the time. You recognize that there's a problem, and I'll give you an example of this in just a moment. You do your information search. That's in italics for a reason. There's the evaluation and the selection of alternatives, also in italics. There is the actual purchase decision, and lastly, there is the post-purchase evaluation. When you discover that there is something you need to change, you are at the problem recognition stage. For almost every single person here, you have realized at some point in time you need to move. Whether it's out of your parents' 2,500 square foot basement, 2,500 square feet, whether it's moving out of your parents' place and going off to college or going to work, whether it's moving because you're having kids and you need a larger place, whether it's moving because you're downsizing, whether it's moving temporarily because you have family that you need to deal with from a health issue standpoint and you need to spend 6 months living somewhere else, whatever it is, you recognize a problem with the current environment. So you do your information search. No one ever goes out and says, all right, I'm just going to go and buy a house. Here's my price range. Hey, realtor, let me know when it's done. You do your information search. You explore the neighborhoods. You drive around. You go and you look at multiple houses. You research what the market is like. Depending on what you're doing, you look for nearby schools, nearby hospitals, nearby grocery stores, nearby churches, whatever it is that your interests include. That information search leads you to evaluate and select alternatives within the short list of the places you've decided on. And then you go in and you make your purchase decision. You put in your offer, your counter offer, and eventually you end up buying something. And then you do your post-purchase evaluation. You go through and you say, hey, it turns out that I'm going to need to do some electrical work or some plumbing work, or it turns out that the home inspector said there's a little bit of foundational work that needs to be done, or maybe I need to get a lawn cutting service, or maybe I need to buy a lawnmower. Maybe I need to get rid of some of the things I have. Where can I sell some of the furniture that no longer fits? Do I have storage solutions? This happens in almost every single purchasing type of an environment. I say almost because there's certain things you don't have too much choice in. There's very, very few. Even at this point in time, you have options on who sends your satellite into space. So If we can help with some of these areas, like information search, by making sure they can find the content that is relevant to the questions the audience is asking. If we can help with the evaluation and the selection of alternatives by doing things like a product comparison. If we can help with that post-purchase evaluation by giving them additional support. Hey, congratulations on buying that phone. Here are a couple of different options on apps and services that you may want to put onto your phone. Or congratulations on purchasing the house. Here are a couple of things in the area. After we bought our house, the realtors dropped by. They had some information about stuff in the area. They also dropped off a little gift basket, the equivalent of a couple bottles of wine, some vouchers for restaurants, the same type of thing that that community services might do as they're going around introducing you to the area. If we in our environment can help with this, we help drive sales because people recognize the information we're providing as being what they need and what they want to make those decisions. There is therefore a convergence of that marketing pre-sales and that post-sales technical communication side of things like the instructions manual. Now, before I move on, is this making sense? Okay, how many people in here are already involved with either marketing or with their marketing team? Okay, about 2/3 of the hands. How many people in here are involved in the technical communications, the writing side? Again, about the same number of hands. And the last question, who's actively working within both? Okay, there's some overlap, but there's several hands that went up for one and several hands that went up for the other. The more we know about how other people are working in our organization, the more we can align ourselves with their interests, the more likely it is that we bring in support from them as sponsors on any type of a documentation project or a marketing project. The idea of convergence then is that marketing and the technical side have very much the same end users. You have customers, but the way that the technical detail may exist differs. The type of content may differ. In both cases, they want the content in a multi-channel environment. They want to be able to access it. Who likes having a PDF file available to them? Quick show of hands. Who likes having web-based content available? Who likes having an app that supports stuff? Who doesn't care as long as you get the right information whenever you want it? Yeah, for that one, all the hands pretty much go up. And that's the way that it should be. But at the exploratory stage, when you're learning, you don't need all of the same very technical information. Once you have made your purchase decision, you need more technical information, but you still want a lot of the same type of information available based on who you are and what you know. When we were building our house, I have a pretty good idea of how to build a house. I haven't built one where I've been in charge of every aspect of it, but I have done plumbing, I've done electrical, I've done concrete work, I've done masonry work, I've done framing, just not to the level of a professional who's involved. But I had to talk to different audiences. I had to find out from the different people who were available, what are the skills that they bring to the table? What do they need? Where can I help? Being on site meant that I was able to walk through the house as they were building it. I was able to participate. I was able to say, hey, you know what? It would be really cool if we added a window here or we put a door there. Things that you try to think about, but you can't remember. I had to deal with multiple audiences. So as I'm going through, I had to take all of that information and look at it. I got technical information from our house builder. They gave us blueprints. I was able to talk to an electrician, a plumber, a carpenter, and get feedback on what works and what doesn't. I was able to show them early. Here's a bunch of content that is representative of the type of information that this home builder will give. Is this content useful to you? And then we turned around and we dropped, I don't know what the package for the house runs specifically, but you know, $150,000, $200,000 to get all the logs, the windows, the roofing material. That's a lot of money for me personally. And I made the decision because in a marketing environment, they made sure they also provided the technical information on how and what has to be done. There are differences between the technical audience that we write for in the technical communication side and the sales or the promotional side that marketing writes for. But ultimately, there's the company and the customer, and there is one set of end user or customer or potential customer that exists. We need to make sure that we deliver to both. So as users, you don't care how you buy a ticket to a concert. That isn't the big thing. The next morning, having to have the coffee and get back up, that's not the part that matters to you. What you remember is the overall experience. And yes, there can be times where that ticket sale or the post-party hangover kicks in. Just curious, how many people went out to the pub crawl? Okay, and I was going to say, yeah, I was going to say, how many people went to the pub crawl and aren't here? We can just count, yeah. But you remember the experience. It's the same thing with the conference. How many people remember the URL that you registered for Summit? No one. Yeah. How many people remember the URL to do your evaluation of the speakers? No one. How many people are going to remember the other people that you met here, the experiences you had, and the stuff you learned? Everyone, right? That's the experience. That's what we need to be selling to people. So we have an integration that's happening between tech, comm, and marketing, and we write to different people at different stages, but ultimately they are our customers. So you have a novice or a beginner or a competent individual, somebody who is proficient or expert. They come back to buy more from you at different stages as well. Being able to go out and say, we've created content that is applicable to one audience or another audience starts to give you the opportunity to speak to them in the language that they want and to deliver the information that they need. I think it's safe to say that everyone who is at the conference has a basic proficiency level in Microsoft Word. So it becomes a common point of conversation to be able to say, yeah, I've used Microsoft Word, I've created some content at some point in time. There's the odd person who has not. But it means that I can start a conversation with somebody who I could consider to be, let's say, competent or proficient inside Microsoft Word. Now, if I turn around and I'm talking about a component content management system, I've met people here who are novices. They have no professional experience, but I can find relevant things to talk about. I can show them from a marketing standpoint some promotional material that then leads into some of the technical information that includes, here is the installation, here are the specifications that are required. And even if that person is a novice or works their way up to a beginner here, they can take the content back and talk with another audience and say, look, I have some marketing information that contains some technical content that I don't understand about the specifications required in order to host this on-premise on a computer here. Do we meet these requirements? This is a bit of a technical slide, and you don't have to worry if you can't see the whole thing. I'm going to show a little demo related to this kind of stuff after this in the Adobe side of things, but I've highlighted a couple of areas here because one of the things that I like doing is being able to give, especially on the marketing side, the people who are not as technical the opportunity to see what they want rather than what I think they need to see. Give them control over the content. So in here, I've taken some information or a step and set it up so that it applies to one of two different products. So now my audience can say, I want to see a comparison. I want to see the version A or the version B of a product and immediately get results on what the differences are. So as I start to create the content, I like seeing it in something that's a little more friendly. So this is just the same idea in FrameMaker, but it's highlighted. And what you can see is under step 4, there's 2 phrases of information, and there's an entire step 5 that's inside here. Lastly, I've got a chunk of content on how to change the seat temperature display. So the idea here is that I have 2 different products that I'm delivering. And when I deliver the product, I'm going to give my audience the opportunity to pick whether they want to see product A or product B, but there's a lot of common content as well, which means that as a writer, I can write it once. If it's stored in DITA, then I have a format that is interchangeable because any software tool that can work with this type of code can grab the content and pull it in, and that includes doing a transformation, taking the content and making it into a PDF or into an HTML. So I could grab this and say, only show me audience A or product A or product B and give me a marketing brochure that includes this small set of information that says, here's how easy it is to adjust the seat temperature or change the display from Fahrenheit to Celsius and back. So I go through and I say, all right, I'm going to go in and customize my output so that I can turn it around and I can hand people. And again, from the back, it might be a little difficult to see some of this, but I have multiple types of environments that I'm going to select so that I can give my user, in this case, the opportunity to toggle on and off what is going to be seen. If I decide I don't want the user to do that, if I want to have a PDF document where you cannot toggle the information on and off, and then it goes off for printing so that it can go to a trade show, I can still grab the information and say, build me dynamically the right information that includes product A or product B. Again, does that make sense? I don't want to go into the tech of how it's done. I just want it as an idea. So I hand them a consistent user experience. And I talk about marketing and technical communication, but you can go much further with this. Support can come along, and as they have the conversation with a customer and they say, oh, thanks a lot for calling technical support. Are you a Mac user or are you a Windows user? And when they say, I'm on a Mac, check mark. Now, as the support person, I only see the Mac content. Then I ask, are you behind a company firewall? Are you able to access the internet in order to get a patch, to get a fix for the stuff that's wrong? No, I am not. Not behind a firewall. All right, I've got a link that I can send you. It'll have a patch. If, on the other hand, they say, yeah, I am behind a firewall, Department of Energy, we're not allowed to go out and grab stuff off of the internet. No problem. Let me call up your record. Now you go in, you check out the record, you find who they are, and you say, what we're going to do is contact the rep that's out in that area. We're going to make sure that your IT department gets access to the patch so that they can update things. That gives a solution. And if it turns out that that solution is not the right one, then ideally you're also integrated with the support department. And then marketing can turn around and say, hey, you know, when we get support calls and they're not answered, there was a piece that was done by Mike Hamilton, a presentation. He's with Madcap, and he says, when we ran into a situation with RoboHelp, he had been on the RoboHelp team previously, he said, we realized that people were doing a search and everybody was complaining they weren't able to find information. We were putting content out there, and we were talking about the idea of inserting an audio clip. And people said, I can't find any way to add sound files. And we said, but it's right there. It's under insert an audio clip. Well, the words insert audio clip have nothing to do with add sound files. So once they discovered this on the support side, they didn't rewrite everything. They just made sure that behind the scenes they associated the two phrases with each other. And as soon as somebody tried to find out how to add, it went to insert. As soon as they looked for sound, it also showed audio. And the developers were able to start looking at that and saying, how do our customers talk about our product? And marketing was able to turn around and use it as a success story and say, look, when RoboHelp development discovered that there were issues in the way that we were working with customers and the requests that they were making weren't being answered, we reacted by going out there and giving them an immediate fix. And then we started changing the way the product works moving forward. Now, Adobe has since acquired RoboHelp, and if you had a chance and you stopped at the Adobe booth while you were here, they were actually demonstrating the new product. And it was kind of funny because I'm watching them demonstrate, and when people say, oh, but I'm scared about putting my product information out there because my competition will get it. Yes, your competition will get it. You know how? Because as soon as Adobe started doing their demo at the booth, somebody from the Madcap booth walked over with a notepad and started watching and jotting down notes, which is brilliant. Do that. If somebody says, our competition will get it, go to a trade show and watch and see if anyone demos what your product does. Do you bring along models of your software? Do you bring along physical product in order to set up, let's say, a large directional drilling rig used in the mining industry? Because if you do those things, guaranteed your competition is going to be walking around, whether their badge says that they're with that company or not. When there's dollars involved, they are taking pictures, they are taking video, they are talking to your people on the floor in order to find out what does your product do. Now, we end up with one user at the end of the day. We have one set of content that we want to be able to deliver. Yes, question.
Support that because I do competitive intelligence as well.
Sorry, you said you can support that because you are a spy. Yeah. One of the ladies here said, I do competitive intelligence. I can support that. Absolutely.
And I take pictures and I talk to people and people tell you things that they never, ever, ever should.
Yeah. I'm just going to repeat it because I'm recording this, but you said you take pictures, you take video, and the people on the floor will tell you things that they never, ever should. chocolate, battery pack. I'm going to give you both because you're just going to spy and take them from me.
I don't do it all the time.
Right.
It's a sideline.
Yeah, and here's a question, show of hands. How many people here, when you're creating your product documentation, how many people have access and are willing to admit it? It's not on video or anything, unless someone's recording right now. How many people here have access to their competitors' materials and review it as you create your own? I would guess, what's that, about a third of the hands, give or take? I see Beth Agnew at the back. Beth is the chair of, 1753 departments in the School of Media at Seneca? 9 programs. When you work on putting together programs at Seneca, I am assuming you look at what other schools are offering, what you can do to differentiate it, and what they're doing successfully. And I'm one of those horrible people that teaches at your program and another school program.
And we have stealth students.
And you have stealth students.
I apply to other programs, but I never ask you to.
So when you are in an environment where it is academia, there is competitive intelligence, there is competitive research, and I would guess that there's certain organizations within that you consider to be a more direct competitor because of geography, and others that are more of a competitor because they also offer online. But ultimately, the goal is to build the best product that you can, bring in the best people that you can. And in some cases, you're bringing in contractors who work for multiple organizations. They will have the competitive intelligence of where else they have worked, what else they have done. I mentioned the complexity of some of the stuff hidden away on the DITA side a few minutes ago, but the output could apply to everybody. So I could come along and say, look, I have the luxury and the base model of this vehicle. And you can see that I've highlighted in the first of those scribbled circle areas under 4, there's a base and a luxury, and then there's information at the bottom about changing the seat temperature display. This could be your HTML5 content that is delivered either to a client or to your internal support department or to your development team that says, here's the things we're doing. And then by clicking and toggling, somebody can say, well, just show me the base model. And now you only read the relevant content. Again, another story of where this matters. I am technical enough. I can set up a VM on my computer. I can install Windows. I've done the Windows 3.1, Windows 95, Windows 2000. I can play with the DOS command line. I'm not a programmer or a developer, but I'm comfortable doing a lot of that stuff. And because of the TechCom background and the marketing stuff that I've done, I look at materials in a very specific way. Noah, our 19-year-old, said, I'm interested in programming. I said, well, let's see how you do with it before you register for a bunch of courses in school. Because if it turns out that you're genuinely interested, here is an opportunity for you to learn a little bit in advance. And we went out and we picked up a book on Java development. It was one of those idiots' guides to Java. One of the things that happens in the book is you're asked to set up a Java workspace so that you can go in and have a runtime environment that you can start to develop within. As we're looking through the book, it says, here's the instructions. Step 1, do this. Step 2, do that. Step 3, do the other thing. So we start setting his machine up, and then it gets to a step, and it says, if you're on a Mac, do this. If you're on a Windows machine, do that. Somebody just gasped and looked at me in the room. We worked our way through. I said, you want to do development, you're going to have to figure out how to do this. Go install the software. So he went downstairs. He starts installing the software on the computer. He comes up after about an hour and a half. He says, I think I want to go into photography. I said, why? He says, it won't install. I'm following the instructions. Now he's 19-year-old male. He doesn't follow the instructions. So I said, all right, let's go take a look. I do this for a living. I've got a pretty good idea. I know what I'm going to do. So I went down there and I said, yeah, okay, so here it is. We're doing this. It's on your Mac. Now, I'm not a Mac guy, but it says do this. So we did it. And I said, yeah, okay. All right, so this page isn't loading properly that they're telling us to. All right, let's do this on the PC because he's got a PC. So we went over to the PC. We start doing it. And I get down to on a Mac on a PC. I'm looking at it. It's not quite working. I'm starting to curse the idea of Oracle even existing. And about 2 hours later, I said, I don't understand why we're not able to install this stuff. Well, it turns out that the Oracle page had gone down for some of the stuff that had to be done, but Oracle hadn't updated anything on their site. So maybe the instructions were right. Maybe it was because Oracle had an issue that they finally put a solution onto their page. But by that point in time, my wife, who works for IBM, she said, oh, I have the instructions on how to do an IBM Java development environment. Let me just send you a copy. And I looked at it and it said, Windows machine, Mac machine. I said, Windows. It said, here's the Windows specific instructions. Yes, because I don't care about the Mac environment when I'm trying to install on a Windows machine. Give me what I want and give me the opportunity to filter it out and see exactly what I need, not everything that you write about. No one has ever said, oh man, I cannot wait to get my hands on the Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint Access documentation for version 2003, 10, 17, and 365 on Windows and Mac. Boy, I hope it is 50,000 pages long because I'm stoked to read that. And marketing knows this, and they put out marketing material that says, here is Office 365 for the Mac, and look how easy it is to work with it. And the look how easy it is to work with it should show videos, tutorials, link to articles, and step-by-step instructions, as well as perhaps case studies that talk specifically to a Mac or a Windows user of a specific version of Microsoft Office. And that should draw from TechComm and do things like this. Because I can also go in and I can say, I don't want to see the base model. I want to filter and see the luxury model. And when I do that, I only see the information that is relevant to the luxury model. And again, marketing can include this in their content and say, yeah, we don't throw a bunch of crap at you. We give you the relevant information. And if it's not right, we turn around to our support department and we fix it. So here I have the additional information under step 4. I have an extra step that talks about how to cool the seat faster by adjusting fan speed. And I mentioned that you can change the temperature display when you're looking at the luxury model instead of the base model. So from an implementation standpoint, some of the stuff that I showed here was using FrameMaker in behind the scenes. It was working with some of the DITA content. I can load this into a content management system so that I have it in a web-based environment. Marketing uses AEM. How many people in here in the marketing side? Just quick show of hands. Do you know, is your marketing environment using Adobe Experience Manager and behind the scenes for things like InDesign for handling assets like your, graphics, doing web metrics in order to track who shows up, when, how long they stay, what their path is? The AEM environment would also let you take your TechComm stuff with the XML add-on and then load all your content into one system and interconnect it. So now somebody can come along and say, look, we have all of these different tools in behind the scenes. And yes, I happen to use the Adobe example in here because it's based on a paper we did for Adobe. So Adobe has all this stuff, and I say it in an umbrella. I'll put little air quotes around the stuff. What it lets you do, though, is build something like a web page where you say, I'm going to have the header for the page, the body content, I'm going to have marketing information here and technical communications content here, and I'm going to merge it together into a single customer experience. And the customer comes along and reads about the best rovers made for you. They can see the marketing information about the rover being able to conquer any terrain, but they can also read all of the technical specifications so that they can see exactly what it is that they're going to get and what the capabilities are from a totally technical standpoint. And as the consumer, I don't care who has that content. There's always this discussion about, oh, that's marketing's content. Oh, that's legal's content. Oh, no, we can't touch that information. That belongs to training. No, it doesn't. It doesn't belong to marketing. It doesn't belong to legal. It doesn't belong to training. It is a corporate asset. It belongs to the company. And if those silos are artificially created and exist and prevent you from getting access to content that helps generate revenue and cut cost, then they need to be destroyed. And until we get to the point where we start to talk to marketing and to project management and to the development team and to the support team and the sales team, and everybody gets on board that we have one customer and that our goal is to deliver a consistent experience to that customer, we're going to continue to fail on the business side. Again, the QR code should link you to the paper. But we are sharing information. We should be sharing it regardless of the platform, regardless of the audience, regardless of the source of the content within our organizations. And if we're not doing that, we're failing to meet the needs of our customers. And ultimately, if you don't meet the need of your customer, someone else will. And they will take your business. Ask Blockbuster. There's one left somewhere in Alaska. Right? Netflix has completely dominated. HBO and others are coming along. They're putting their content out there. But Netflix has dominated. They're now starting to do what? Create their own content. Because content is the core business asset that drives revenue. Your intellectual property is content. Your code is content. Your documentation is content. You produce things, but it's produced based on that content. And whether what you're producing is a doc, whether it is tile, or whether it's video on Netflix, that type of finished product is going to drive sales if your customers can go through and inform themselves. I go to Netflix, I tell other people about Netflix, and Netflix has set it up so that you can go in and search for information and find out what kind of shows are on Netflix, even if you don't have an account. Because once you find something you want, you're going to sign up. So last words on this. If you find yourself in an environment where you're dealing with the fight of, hey, our content is going to get into the enemy's hands, they already have it. If you find yourself fighting the battle that says, this is my department's content, whoever says it is lying. They are making it up. Because if their department vanishes tomorrow in a corporate restructuring, the content doesn't vanish. It is a corporate asset. How many people in here own their own business? Just quick show of hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, myself. If you own your own business and you create your own content, then yes, you can make the argument that this is my content. If someone else pays your check, and even for those of us that work for ourselves, when you have a client who comes along and says, I need some research done, competitive intelligence on someone else, you create the information, but at the end of the day, they almost always want to own the content. They want the right to do with it as they see fit. So anyone who says it's my content is lying unless it's J.K. Rowling. She owns her content. She owns Harry Potter. She owns all of it. She owns everything in England. Probably.
Queen doesn't know.
Yeah, it's either the Queen or J.K. One of the two of them. Between them, they own everything in England. There are certain people that, yes, they own it. But even music, even bands don't always own their content, and they end up going into a battle with their label. So be aware that no matter what the argument is against sharing the content, against making the content available, people are going to get it. Marketing is going to talk about product. They have to. They're going to be at the trade shows talking about stuff that they shouldn't be talking about because they're going to be talking to a client that is sitting on a $50 million deal. And you have to have those conversations. So eventually the information gets out there. Do what you can with all of your technical content in order to help drive new revenue, in order to build business using some of the ideas shown here. I see somebody just put their hand up for a question. Give me just one moment. I'm going to go in and stop the recording here with a quick thank you to everybody who attended, and then I will move on to Q&A.